have you established like this is your space, your interview space in your apartment?
This is it. And I know like this is my painting studio in my garage, and it's slightly messy, but I've tried other configurations. I can get away from my family if they're being noisy. I don't have to make the whole household be silent because it's a detached garage. And then I bought ring lights and a bunch of other stuff, same as you, to deal with all the like the Zoom stuff happening. And nothing works as well as sitting in front of this little square window of the garage. So I just sit here and kind of like, it's mostly dark, so it's not that distracting.
No, it's lovely. So you're a painter.
I do figurative oils and acrylics, but I haven't painted in oil in probably 20 years just because I was constantly nomadic with my job and I can't leave a painting that's not dry out with paints out and everything. So I kind of switched to acrylic, and then had the great fortune of working even more. So then it switched to just drawing. And then now I've found some time. So I've got I'll show you. Hang on.
Sure.
I draw from live figure study models, but I can't do that now either. So I've just been painting from photographs.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks. The light's kind of weird here, but thanks. How about you? Have you had like hobbies that you've gotten back to?
I've been getting really into picture puzzles, like proper cardboard picture puzzles.
I love puzzles. I am a fanatic about the hand cut, and they're thick actual wood, and you drop pieces in and they lock.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that would be very hard for my cat to eat those. So that has an extra.
A little harder. Yeah. I have a cat too. That's another reason that I did a couple of live like radio plays, Thrilling Adventure Hour and a benefit reading of a play. And when I do those in the house as well, the cat is just like, has to walk across the keyboard, has to bat shit, has to chew the plug.
I saw one of your benefit plays. I'm blanking on the name now, unfortunately, but the two-hander with Paul F. Tompkins.
Hate Mail by Bill Corbett.
That was wonderful.
Oh, thanks. It was such a well-suited piece for what we're technologically having to do right now, because it's two people that are supposed to be reading letters, and it's just a two-hander, so it lended itself really well to that. And then I did the Thrilling Adventure Hour was meant to be a radio play, so that also lends itself pretty well to the medium that we all have to use right now. And then John Patrick Shanley wrote, I want to say 10, it might be 15 monologues that were all meant to be performed online, and I did one of those. Those just came out last week.
Wonderful. Well, I'm glad you're keeping busy. And I mean, I feel like, especially getting to do theater projects like, online theater projects like this, it's an opportunity for you to get to stretch a little bit, which after 5 seasons of playing this one character, I imagine is kind of a relief.
It is, but I'll say two things. One, it's my favorite character I've ever played, so I'm always thrilled to get back to it. But two is we have 10 to 11 month hiatuses every single time. So even though this time is unfortunately coming with the pandemic and the world being on fire, the other times I've done other parts in between all the time anyway. So I usually am fortunate enough to get to play some other things. I have a film coming out called Things Heard and Seen with that's by Sherry Springer Berman and Bob Pulcini, genius director writers that I love. And it stars Amanda Siegfried and James Norton, and there's this whole really great cast, but it's complete. I went to do that in upstate New York, probably maybe 5 days after we stopped shooting Saul, and it was extremely different. Like nothing like him at all. So that was fun.
Well, I'm glad you had at least a couple of days, because I've heard you definitely hear stories about actors who jump immediately like the next day into a new project.
Yeah, and then there's people that like that, and there's people that don't. If you are ever fortunate enough that you can pick and choose whether to work or not, which is not the majority of my life, some people are like, "Yay, I have like 6 months off." That's not a good thing for me. I don't like. I don't like. About a week off is good. That's about it.
Yeah, that's about all you need. I randomly tweeted just casually about Franklin and Bash because last
Love
week.
Franklin and Bash. I
Yes.
loved that show. Yeah.
Are you aware that there's an ongoing fan theory that, or like the Better Call Saul ends with Kim Wexler just changing her name to Ellen and moving to become an assistant DA in another city?
Swatello. I love it. No, I was not aware of that. That's hysterical. Yeah, she has there's some similarities. I feel like there's more differences than similarities, but there's definitely a very terse way of speaking. If Kim was trying to be witty with how terse and clipped she speaks, then she would be going towards Swatello. I feel like Ellen was very aware of having zingers. And there's no way Ellen Swatello would sit as silently as Kim does through like 8 pages of, in her mind, idiots blabbing on, and she's just waiting to go in for the kill. Yeah, just that's funny. In some ways, Ellen seems so buttoned up, but actually, I feel like Ellen has a lot less restraint than Kim Wexler.
Well, I've always really enjoyed the fact that Kim as a character is allowed to be a little awkward, isn't always trying to be as the wittiest person in the room, and it's just like it's a nice steadying like balance with Jimmy in a lot of respects.
I agree. I mean, one of my favorite scenes I did this year, I know there's all these like incredible pivotal scenes that were quite explosive as she sort of evolved or devolved, depending on how you look at it this season. One of my favorite scenes was where she comes home and Jimmy is trying to get her to enjoy what they're doing to Mesa Verde, and she's struggling with guilt about it. And he gets her to do an impression of Kevin Wachtel, played by the brilliant Rex Linn. And Tom Schnauz wrote that, and Jim McKay directed it. And we had these conversations about Kim is definitely a worthwhile sparring language partner for Jimmy when they are doing like witty repartee back and forth. They definitely understand each other's sense of humor, and she's very dry, extremely dry. But she's not a performer like Jimmy is, and like I think you're talking about, or even like Ellen Swatello. She's not. I don't think she's ever doing a bit or like you said, trying to perform, which is always a balance when you're playing a lawyer, but you yourself are an actor. Lawyers are performers themselves in a courtroom, but not necessarily in the same way that an actor understands the theatrics of a scene. And so where do you find that balance? And with that scene imitating Rex Linn, I went to Tom and to Jim and said, you know, honestly, I feel like she probably isn't very good at it, impressions. And I think she likes that. That's Jimmy. That's not her. He's the performer. And once we did it, it added this element that really worked well storytelling wise, that there's a vulnerability and a sweetness to her showing her belly. If you've ever been around, you know, somebody that's a gifted storyteller or extremely funny, and you thought you had something funny to say, you sort of like, it's daunting to try to perform in front of a gifted performer, or to try to be the funny one. And so I think for her, it was showing her soft belly a little bit of like, okay, I'll try, but I know it's going to be stupid. And then he laughs and plays along with it, and she feels valued in a totally different way for her, I think.
No, I mean, I'm so glad you brought up that scene because it's one of my favorites of the season. And I think, what's so interesting about it is you definitely pick up on her being really awkward about being asked to perform. But then because Jimmy is just a generous scene partner, like, you know, much like I'm sure Bob Odenkirk is, yes. Because of that, she gets more comfortable and she has more fun with it.
Yes, she does. And it was such and then there's this other thread spinning the whole time where it's one of the first times, I mean, we've seen some outburst again, like hanging up on Paige when she was in the middle of doing pro bono work and didn't want to go. We've seen her get more and more, even looking at the models of like all the banks he wants to build and realizing like, this is going to be my life. So we've seen these hints of her not just feeling unfulfilled, but developing a kind of resentment about everything that the Kevin Wachtels of the world represent to her. And I don't think we knew that it was growing to such a personal resentment level until that scene. Like, that's also threaded in there when she's doing the impression of him. She's laughing, but you can see that like she really has some seething thoughts about him and his need to populate his effing statues everywhere.
Well, and then the other amazing thing about that scene is that there's that great callback to it at the end of Wexler versus Goodman. Geez, I can talk today. But there's that, because like at the beginning, he's like, at the beginning of the scene at the end of the episode, he's like, do the Kevin voice, and he's trying to get that back out, and the way in which Kim just shuts it down is really incredible.
I agree. That was fun to do that callback, and they've done that before. They go when they're going to the bar, and he wants her to help her pull a scam. I forget what season that was in, but that same kind of callback of like trying to, and Peter and Vince talk about it as that sort of the sadness that comes when you're trying to recall and relive a magical moment with someone and it's lost. It's just not there anymore.
Yeah, no, it's really sad. I saw the the Vanity Fair article that included the script page from the
I haven't seen that. I lost my phone for 13 days, which has had a lot of pluses, but I couldn't get into my Twitter account, anything until today. So I've just like, okay, I'll check it out. The Vanity Fair article.
It's Peter Gould's notes on the final page of the script for Wexler versus Goodman.
I want to see that.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of it, like his notes, it's like meant to be like handwritten notes. A lot of it is about just kind of trusting you and Bob on with the page, just like giving you guys space to breathe within the lines. And is that something that you guys talk about?
It's never taken for granted. It's just that I'm so aware, working with Peter and everyone that they hire as directors and the writers, and Peter as showrunner sort of has a mandate. I can feel it. It doesn't even need to be said that he expects people to trust us. And it goes both ways. We don't ad lib, we don't improv, we don't change lines. If you have questions about lines and are really struggling with what is this transition here and what am I doing here, they will definitely listen to you. It's not a dictatorship, but the script is sort of much more like when I did theater and you have a play. It's pretty much, that's the foundation and that's it. And this is a brilliant foundation. And then you build on that. And in the same way that I feel like they reciprocate a tremendous amount of trust in us to play everything that's between the lines. And for me, that is a huge part of why Jimmy and Kim seem like such a real relationship, as do some of the cartel relationships and all of that, is because so much of life is about what's between the lines and what's not spoken, and when people choose to speak and when they choose not to speak. And, anybody who's been in a relationship as long as Jimmy and Kim have, you can't say anything without there being subtext, for better or for worse. Sometimes you can't say like, are you going to pick up food, without having a history of knowing like, man, I really hope he doesn't get this again or that again, or I hope he doesn't pick that. So there's just tons and tons of history, and yeah, they really give us the room to breathe. And that finale and the scene that you're talking about was very wily, because it is extremely unclear exactly what's going on, and the dynamics keep shifting about who is leading the conversation and who's following, and who is trying to suss out what the other person is actually thinking, until eventually she makes the final chess move. But it was cool. It took a lot of conversations with Peter about that one, because I had my thoughts on what I thought her subtext was. There are a lot of elements going on. There is how sincere is she being? How pre-planned is this? Are these thoughts occurring to her in the moment? There is a preceding scene with Patrick Fabian playing Hamlin that's great, that really tees up the fact that we've seen for many seasons, and this season in particular, this build in her of how much she cannot stand to be told who she is and who's good for her and who's bad for her, and like she's not the architect of her own life or anything. And that's going on in that story. The fact that the debt has never been paid on his surprise to her at the end of last season of, hey, I also have this alter ego, hope you're fine, ha, bye. And she's like, what? And so that's there, this like kind of like, really, you think you know me? You think you know all of my masks? How about this one? So we were trying to figure out what are the levels, like what's true, what's gamesmanship, what's happening in the moment, what is she letting slip out and then trying to backpedal on, all of these elements. And then also being aware that because they're such masterful storytellers, that I can't overly dictate exactly what I'm thinking and what everything means either, because we have to leave possibilities open for the audience and for the next season. Their writing was very subtle. It's explosive at times, but in that scene, the transitions are extremely subtle, and I wanted to honor those. They didn't overwrite, so I didn't want to overact it, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I mean, something that's been fascinating me about this episode ever since I first watched it is that, we get this flashback scene at the very beginning, and that is arguably the most we've ever learned about Kim as a person. And, it's not a scene you're in, but, in reading it, how do you, reading it, maybe even watching it being filmed, like, how were you able to take that and let it kind of inform what you were doing later in the episode?
I didn't let it in. Well, I mean, I did. As an actor, I was aware of, if you're reading a novel and that's one of the chapters, you have to take that into consideration. Not just, so Kim was raised by an addict and she's damaged, because to be honest, that was part of my internal jigsaw puzzle pieces that I was putting together long before. I don't think I tried to nail down specifics, but well, as an actor, I do. Like, I have to make up my own backstory just for me. And her vice grip on wanting to control situations and wanting to sort of safeguard against chaos, even though she's can be loving and attracted to it at the same time. Her obsession with cleaning up after people and not wanting to ever rely on other people. To me, that was all very, oh, you have an alcoholic parent. Or someone in a position of power and leadership in her life. It just felt extremely unreliable and addictive, and both an addict and addictive to in codependence and all of that. Not that I think that they have classic codependency as a relationship, Jimmy and Kim, but anyway, that part of the story I had considered. So it was kind of cool to go like, oh wow, that's what they're showing. But what I more took in as an actor prepping that script was, why are they choosing to show this now? Like, what is it informing that's in another scene in this? What question is it answering, or what question should I raise in another scene that takes off from there or is fed by that? So it was more me as an actor, just with script analysis, trying to make sure that I honored that they chose to do this, because I had a lot of very cool conversations with Peter Gould over the years and Vince Gilligan, asking about certain backstory elements, because I was just curious. Some they felt that they weren't certain about, so they don't want to tell me if they haven't nailed those down. Other things they said they're still working on or thinking about. But for the most part, Peter said, when you have a very enigmatic character like him that is loved for being sort of unreadable at times and has such an array of complex behavior and reactions to things, you can ruin it by answering too many questions. Like you know what I mean? Like the crutch can be, let's show a massive backstory that explains why she behaves the way she does. And I just feel like the character would sort of crumble under the weight of that.
It's interesting. I interviewed Jonathan Banks years ago, and he was saying that while during the process of making Breaking Bad, when he filmed his first scene with his granddaughter Kaylee, you know, nothing was explained about the fact that there is a little girl and her mother, and he was meeting them beyond the fact that she was his granddaughter. And apparently he went to Peter Gould or Vince Gilligan and said, just basically told them, that woman is not my daughter. My son, my son is the father of that child, and he's not there anymore. And from there, they extrapolated the whole, Mike backstory. And
interesting.
And that was them taking inspiration from his idea. Have there been moments for you where you've suggested something about Kim's life that that has made its way into the scripts?
I don't know of anything specifically. I mean, they've heard me talk about my ideas of, like I said, that like she seems somehow like somebody who has had gamblers or addicts in her life, and there's a push-pull. Was she one, or was she raised by one, or was she attracted to one? They were aware that I thought that was a part of her makeup. They were also aware that I feel like there is, much like they do in their writing, they put questions out there and then try to solve them in their storytelling, which is to me a very scary way to write. And Vince and Peter say it on panels all the time, that like, it's kind of, they realize it's sort of insane. There's no Bible for their shows. Obviously with a prequel, they're aware of what some things are in place. There are mileposts that have to be, if not met, acknowledged at least. But for the most part, yeah, they throw things out there that they don't even know how to solve, and then have to write to that and get around it. Usually, but it's always character driven, because I know that's important to them too. They think that the characters should drive the plot, not the other way around. So I don't have any specific cases like that, but I know that they had positive responses. All of the writers have spoken to me at some point over the years about how I played the scenes where she chooses not to speak, the sort of silent moments, and the thoughtfulness, and how that leads to my reading and performance of the lines that then do come out. So I'll be excited to ask them one day over drinks when this is all over. Not so much like, hey, do you give me any credit for things, but like it would be curious. They've said publicly that they didn't see the story they're writing for me now. They did not see the Kim that they ended up writing, and where that came from, I don't know. It's been a organic process where I can feel that they value what I bring to her, and then I value what they give back.
One random thing I wanted to ask about before I forget. I was rewatching, The Wedding in all of its romantic splendor, and I could be wrong about this, but I felt like the second kiss at the end in the ceremony, it felt unscripted. It felt like a moment of improv, and I'm curious, like if that was scripted or not.
Was it scripted? By the way, that was Melissa Bernstein's directing debut, and I thought she did a brilliant job. She's been a stalwart, incredible force leader as an executive producer on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and I was thrilled that she was directing. I want to say, doesn't Huel say one more time because he's trying to take a photo?
You're right. I think he does do that. Yeah.
Then
Yeah. Okay.
He said that and did improv that once, and I can't remember if the take they used kept him saying that or if they just kept the result, which was we did kiss again.
Right.
Yeah, that's funny. That would be a rare moment if that's what that came out of, because I know people ask all the time. There's so few. I can count on one hand the number of times in 5 seasons that anybody has improv. There are very spontaneous acting moments, don't get me wrong, and I have given pauses that are not written to the script, and Jimmy and I have turned lines and really shifted the intentions of scenes and the pace of scenes. But I'm trying to, I know everyone thinks the toothbrushing scenes, like when we are laughing, are all improv. They're not. Tom Schnell's right every single word of those. They Jenny Hutchinson's writing, Allison Tatlock's, I mean, Ann Cherkis, Gordon Smith. I think every single one of them at some point has written something that everyone has, or not everyone, people have written to me on social media saying that part was improv, right? And it wasn't. I mean, down to the and the well, they're written.
No, and that's, I mean, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me, of course, if it was fully scripted, but it like, I think there was just something about the moment where it felt, as someone who's been watching the show kind of obsessively for several years, like it stood out as just maybe the slightest chance of a moment of improv.
That's so funny. I have to look at it. I cannot remember. I'll have to like look at my script.
Yeah, no worries. That is a natural segue to asking about what it was like to shift to VEEP for a few episodes.
That was fun. That was during last hiatus.
Right.
Yeah, I did 6 of 8 of them, I think it was, in the end. And you know, they were shifting storylines and they changed their episode count that was announced. I'm not telling tales or anything. So I don't know what they plan on doing, David Mandel and that whole team plan on doing with my character to begin with. They told me very, very little, but I said, David, I really don't care. I could just be background. I don't care. Like, to be on VEEP, which I think is one of the most brilliant comedies, if not the most brilliant comedy of all time. To be on it at all, to be in their finale season, and then to watch that set of geniuses doing what they're doing. Because I'm coming from Saul, watching what I think are all genius level people doing like the top of their game plus 200% every day. And I was like, are you kidding? Now I get to do like the comedic side of that. So I told them, don't worry about it. You don't have to give me anything to do. I'm just going to stand here and watch. And I think I had like a line here or there. And then they just brilliantly, quietly set up this crazy broken woman that ends up doing a lie Me Too movement thing and all of that. It was so bizarre. But everyone was so great there. The finale itself was, I ended up being in the finale, which was fantastic. And I kept pinching myself every day. And Julie Louis-Dreyfus is more of a genius, more generous, and more beautiful than you thought. If you're as big of a fan of her as I am, it's more. It's like devastating, like a energy force that comes off her that you can't even believe she exists. She's amazing. And then generous, perfectly happy to make sure someone else, could be a day player, could be me, doesn't like, gets the laugh. She will racket it back. As will Tony Hale. I mean, everyone in that cast is so, Anna Klumsky was so lovely to me, even though I was set up to be a physical joke of like being her hunched over reading a phone. And she was dying laughing, wanted me to like take it further. She's lovely. But so I'm there doing the finale and couldn't believe that I get to be in the finale. What was happening while they shot the finale was, you know, you're going to wrap out an actor, and it's a series wrap, which is this huge thing. And for any listeners that don't know, that means like every season when Patrick Fabian does his very last scene, a lot of the actors try to gather and be there when he's doing his last scene of season 5, and it's like that's a season wrap on Patrick Fabian. You know, there's some tears because we're going to go away for 10 months and all the hard work, and we love you. This was series wrap, which is like tons of tears, and they've been going for a long time, and are like family to each other. So little by little, every day, people started showing up that had ever been on the show in any capacity, characters that had arcs that are now returning, any director who's ever directed, any writer who's ever written on it, they're all coming back. So Video Village, where you're watching the scenes, which is usually like 6 to 8 people, started to be 25 and then 50 and then like 200. And they get to the last, and people are crying. I mean, Tony Hale, series wrap. And I'm a massive fan. And try as I might to become all of their best friends in 1 week, I'm not. Like, they're they're actual friends. So you're sort of standing there and trying to get out of the way, and they're being lovely and like, come here, Ryan, hugging me. And we get to the very last scene, and it turns out Andy Daly and I are in the last scene of the last episode, where she's alone for a minute at the very, very end, but we're the last 2 people in the future that are this future flash forward they do that speak to her. Andy had been on the show a couple of times, quite a few times, but he was still feeling the same thing I was. We were like nervous, standing off. Everyone who's ever worked on the show is in tears and watching, waiting for the last sentence that she will ever say as Selena. And we're supposed to go in there and do it. And I literally thought I won like Make-A-Wish Foundation. I was like, I'm not supposed to be here at all. And of course I completely fumbled my line. I had one tiny line and I made a mess of it, and they had to cut and start over. And I will be forever thankful that I was in it, but I'm glad they didn't fire me.
I was probably a little late in the game for that.
That's true. You're sort of stuck with me at that point.
I mean, looking forward, you know, I feel like you've gotten to do a lot of different things. I watched an episode of Whitney just because I hadn't ever really watched it with you paying attention to your work, and that was fun to see you get to play in that setting.
Loved it.
Are you?
I loved Roxanne. I modeled Roxanne partially on Maude B. Arthur.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
It was an absolute pleasure. I love that show.
I mean, looking forward, do you have a sense of what you want to do after Saul? Presuming, of course, things are still happening.
Yeah. Hope we're all going back to work soon. Yeah, I don't know. I feel very spoiled by the writing I've been allowed to do in my career, and I just want to keep going forward with that. I know that playing such a multi-layered, nuanced character that is allowed to evolve over the seasons has been so exciting to me and blissfully challenging as an actor to keep peeling this onion, that I really hope that I get to keep doing that kind of work, because it's the same as in your craft or anyone else's craft. When you're given stuff that you really have to rise to the challenge and see if you can get a little bit better or learn a little more. That's all we want in our career, right? Not that I haven't done great writing. Everything I've done, I've been extremely proud of, but this is particular in its ability and allowance for letting a character evolve, and also for honoring pauses. I haven't been in a show before, and it's AMC. It's to AMC's credit as well, that they allow the breath you were talking about early on in the interview between the lines and the space, and to not have to cut and make sure something's happening and all of this, and tell the actors. I mean, even down to the music, Dave Porter's brilliant original scoring and composing, and Thomas Golubik's music supervising and needle drops. It's sparing. They do not tell the audience how they must feel about things in this. And as an actor, I cherish that, because that's what it was like on stage. And I don't compare being on stage to being on camera. I like them both for separate reasons. And I feel elated when I'm doing either one. But I didn't realize till I was doing the show how much I missed that on stage you control your timing. You're at the mercy of an editor when you're doing something else. And I understand everything has its different. Comedy has a much different pace than drama. But to hold the stage when you're doing a show, when you're doing a play, and there is a quiet moment where your character's just breathing and you can feel the audience breathing with you or holding their breath with you, you get to do that on this show. Even though there's a lens there, I'm aware that the audience often in this show has become Kim's greatest confidant. They often know what she's thinking and how much she loathes somebody in the room more than she will ever let anyone in the room know. And I feel them. I feel them breathing with me. And I know in my head, I don't have to sacrifice anything that I wanted to play. If I think she's thinking 6 things before she decides to speak, Peter and Vince will encourage it. My writer will encourage it. My editor will protect it, and AMC will put it on the air. And that's a gift. So I just hope whatever journey I do next, I get to keep exploring spaces where you really feel like you're a contributor in the storytelling in that way.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do want to kind of, on that note, ask about Kim's big final moment of the season. So I know I've seen that you've talked about the finger guns a fair amount, and doing many, many takes of them.
Yes.
In terms of the directing, when you get handed something like that, which is a kind of, it's a fun physical thing that's also for the audience, like chilling in some ways. Like, when you were talking to the director about it, like what was really important for you about nailing that last moment?
I talked to Peter at length about that moment and basically that whole scene. It's written so brilliantly by Peter and Ariel Levine. And I talked to Peter at length about it, and even to the point where I do remember, and I probably still owe him like a bottle of scotch or something, that I realized I got to stop beating up this moment, because it just had to do with wanting to honor this incredible finale he wrote. And while I saw the erosion of parts of Kim, and specifically her ability to tamp down emotional outbursts, or even just being seen as emotional, something that I don't think she ever wants to be around people. She sees it as a loss of control and a loss of power. And that started to fall apart this season. There are outbursts that are very inappropriate. And this is one where you're right. It was like, it's menacing what she's doing, and not just the finger guns, but what she's saying that she wants to do to Howard. It's often funny. It is a callback to what Jimmy did to her in the end of season 4, something that I don't think she thinks has ever been resolved. It's coming on the heels of a scene with Patrick Fabian, who was brilliant in the scene playing Hamlin, where she's had just about enough of people telling her how she should feel about things and who's good for you and who's not good for you. And now Jimmy's doing it. I'm bad for you, which to her, I think translates to number one, she's emotionally invested in him and loves him. And he's getting ready to give the breakup speech. We all know, like, those moments when like, oh shit, oh, we're doing this, oh crap. But additionally, she is so unnerved by people, and now him on top of everybody else. He thinks that that he's bad for her, and that she's not, she doesn't have her own agency. Peter said this great thing on a panel one time when, I think it was Forbes, I'm not sure, some publication had called her the most feminist character on TV, which was so lovely and flattering. And they asked Peter to speak to that. And he said, we never set out to do that. We just, number one, thought, oh, it'll be more interesting if this character has her own agency. Like the Barbara Stanwicks and the Katharine Hepburns of older films, like you wouldn't actually call them feminists, but they were with the men they were with because they chose to, not because they had to be. And that was important to them. And then secondly, they said, we also just didn't think we would ask questions about her character or of her character that we weren't asking of the male characters. So you wind up with a very interesting woman that doesn't have to have a whole storyline about her biological clock, because who gives a crap? And nobody's asking what Giancarlo, oh, I wonder if Gus Fring has kids. That's not the point. That's not part of the story. That's not. So, oh my gosh, I'm talking in circles. All that being said, I was nerve-wracked about the finale, because I need to, as I said to you earlier, I need to meet all of these moments, but I also need to not overact them and overplay them, because there has to be mystery still there. Jimmy is left unsure of how much she means any of this. And what she's doing is this menacing games. No matter what you say, it's menacing what she's doing. Absolutely. Even if she's just effing with him, it's a different kind of play that they don't normally do. Something is off and something is wrong. He's not sure what to make of it. And so therefore I thought, Jimmy's a very perceptive man and he knows Kim better than anybody. So it's important that the audience not be ahead of him. Mm. You know what I mean? If I play things right on the nose and they get it and he doesn't, I don't think that works.
No, totally. I mean, I think what's so compelling to me about this whole thing is that for years, for the last several years, I've been, watching the show and texting my friends in all caps, I just need Kim to be okay. And that was before the finale. And now it's like a much more complicated question about it. It's not just like, oh, I just need Kim in all of her goodness to, make it out of this thing alive. It's who is Kim now and what will she be by the end of it?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, I'm forever appreciative that viewers care so deeply about her. And it's been a fascinating character that is at once incredibly unknowable and then over here incredibly accessible, and maybe one of the most accessible characters on the show as far as people being able to like see themselves and like getting kicked down to doc review or trying to make your way in the world on your own and pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. And so I think I've enjoyed it that people care deeply about her. I care deeply about her. And the question now is, well, she is the architect of her own life. I don't think this is new. I don't think it's new that she seems like she's really making her own choices now. I think you just didn't see them before. What that means going forward, I don't know. They're in the writer's room right now, and clearly they have to answer the question that they raised. But I think both series, both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, have really tread in that world of who are we really, and don't we all have masks that we wear? And the question does remain of like, whether is this who Kim always was that she's desperately been trying to suppress, in which case maybe Jimmy was the best thing that ever happened to her because he's been slowing that down. Or has she become something that she didn't set out to be based on the events and the circumstances? And that question of like, who are we bad? Are we bad for each other? Is as weird to ask as is anybody actually good for somebody? Like, are you only a set of circumstances and the result of everyone you've ever met and everything you've ever done? Yeah, or you are the summary of all of those events, but is there any you when you're alone that you don't show anybody else?
I guess to wrap things up, you just mentioned they're in the writer's room now. How do you feel about knowing that, on a bunch of different computer screens, the fate of Kim is being figured out?
Sad. I feel sad. I feel my complete just like intellectual side of me though is fascinated by how the hell they're going to wrap all this up. Like, I just cannot wrap my head around all the plates they have spinning and everything they have to ask. I'm so curious about who is Kim. I'm so curious. But I'm also so curious about who is Jimmy when he's fully Saul. Like when he's Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad, in the Breaking Bad years, is there any Jimmy left? Is there any conscience there? Or is that just gone? Is he different when he goes home than when he's out? I'm curious about the Gene years. I'm curious about where Kim is. They have some very interesting cartel stuff to wrap up about how Gus Fring and Mike become more bonded, and what happens to Nacho and his poor dad. I get so worried about his dad.
Yeah, Nacho's dad has become my new Kim, where it's I just need Nacho's dad to be okay.
I know, it just kills me. Yeah, Hamlin, like, I mean, are we really going to just take him down and ruin his life? I don't know. I am very excited to see how it all wraps up, but I'm sad. It's like, it's like, you know, a favorite book. You're just of course you want to get to the last chapter, but you're so sad about the last page.
Absolutely. Well, it's been such a pleasure talking with you this evening. Please take care. Hopefully, you and yours are doing all right. And yeah, I hope Kim's okay.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys have been so great to the show and to me. I really appreciate your writing with Collider and all of it. Just really in-depth, thoughtful viewers and writing. So thank you.
Well, thank you again, and hopefully talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you. Happy puzzling.
Thank you very much. Good luck with the art.
Okay, bye-bye.